Oxford from the inside. The good, the bad, but always the truth. Hi, I'm Abbie, and welcome to this episode of Oxford from the Inside. The good, the bad, but always the truth. Today we are joined by Lily. Would you like to introduce yourself, Lily?
Hi guys, my name is Lily. I'm third year at St. Peter's College, Oxford, and I study English literature.
Amazing. Welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show today. And actually today we'll actually be talking about how to rent private accommodation in Oxford. So it's a slightly different from the usual, what's your subject like, or what's your opinions on Oxford or whatever. So it's pretty useful for students in Oxford and also students coming to Oxford. So without further ado, let's go on with it. So, Lily, what are your thoughts then on living out in Oxford?
So I didn't actually choose. So a lot of the time, colleges will tell you whether or not you have to live out or live in, and not all of them make you live out. But I chose St. Peter's not knowing that, or not really understanding what it meant, the difference between it. And I know they told us on the open day, but I think I didn't really get how it worked at Oxford until I got here. But in general, I'm really glad I got to live out, and I think so. At my college, you live in first year, out in second year, and then move back in. And I think that's pretty standard across the colleges, that ones that you do live out at. And so it was not a huge factor in my decision making, but I would recommend really looking at it if you're concerned either way. I think I just wasn't, I was fine with the opportunity, but I wasn't like really looking forward to living out. It was neither here nor there to me, really. And then I ended up really liking it.
Yeah, to be fair, I feel like I'm in a similar situation because I'm in second year at the moment, so I'm currently living out, and I wasn't very happy about having to organize all the stuff, which we'll go into after. But yeah, I suppose I love it now. I love, especially this year, it's kind of worked out that with the whole COVID situation, it's actually
Yeah.
definitely worked out. Less restrictions than in college, but it's definitely nice to live in college though.
Yeah.
Um,
I think for sure last year, having it for the summer, I think that's one of the things, obviously, you have to sign a 12-month lease, or the
mm.
vast majority of people do, but like being here in summer when we were allowed to come back was honestly so nice, and like some of the best times at Oxford.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm really looking forward to this summer. Hopefully everything goes ahead
Yeah.
all right. So you mentioned about a 12-month lease, and I was just wondering, is it more expensive then to live out in Oxford?
So it's on average, I think it does end up, for me and anyway, it ended up being more expensive, but in general, you do have way more leeway than you do in college. So in college, in for my college in first year, we don't get a choice on room or rent price. It's the same for everyone. And then in third year, there are some banded choices, and there are choices whether or not to live in during the vac and over like the term breaks. But in general, I think for most people it does end up being slightly more expensive, but you have like way more freedom on how to manage your budget. And I ended up spending less on everything else, and so it wasn't hundreds and hundreds of pounds more at all living out.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I feel like I think the fact that you're paying for like a 12-month tenancy like makes it more expensive than obviously paying for just the terms in Oxford in the college. But it's funny enough actually, I was comparing and contrasting the price of my accom this year, yeah, living out, and then living in college next year, and it actually turns out it's more expensive to live in college next year. But
Really?
I think I was just quite lucky with how the pricing of my house, because it's not in like, it's in more of a residential area of Oxford. So but yeah, I suppose that's just like one in a million though. So but yeah.
Yeah, and also I think it just depends where you want to live, and like
Yeah.
I think it was relatively easy for everyone who, once you had a group to pick price point, I don't think was like overly difficult for most people.
Yeah.
And I think also like you just get, I mean, there's quite a big range. You can go from like the 400s to the 700s in rent per month, and I think people just choose what they're comfortable with, and then like normally end up living with people who are also comfortable with that, and everybody kind
Yeah.
of will accommodate whoever,
Yeah,
whatever
that's
someone's budget is,
yeah.
basically. That is what I found.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty about living out as well, is that you kind of all, because you know that you're all in that group together, you all sort of pitch in where you can to help each other out. In my experience, it sounds like from your experience as well, that was the same case. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, it creates quite a nice environment, and you get a lot of skills by living out as well. So going about like, pursuing the idea of actually just getting a house in Oxford, When should students actually start considering this, and like how does one go about looking for a house?
So in Oxford, everybody says in Oxford, I think it's this big, huge thing in Oxford to try and find a house. And I don't, I think at Peters, there's something that I think people choose quite early compared to other colleges. And I think there are some houses, so like a 5-man house seems to be like quite popular in Cowley area, but there are so many other places to live in Oxford that like it isn't as stressful and you don't have to like be in first week looking for people to live with. I think you definitely by the end of first term should know the group that you're living with, and like that seems really daunting. And I think also like some friendship groups do change over the year, and obviously like you're not going to be like best, you might be, but like the vast majority of people aren't best mates with the people that they were in freshers week, and like everything changes, but like you won't end up living with people like that you don't like the high likelihood is that you still really like those people. And like for me anyway, I like really enjoyed the people I live with, and like was glad to, like even people that I was less close to by the end of second year, I was glad to still have them in the house. And like as a house we became a group like in itself. And so but I'd say like in general, so we started looking in I think sixth week of first term, sixth or seventh, and then we had two people rusticate. And so there ended up being, there's loads of switching around in my house, and like we ended up having someone from Cats actually live with us, like a friend that's on one of my friend's courses, which was also ended up being great. But like even having like a difficulty finding houses and getting our group to be split, because our group was split over 3 houses, even with all of that, and like it was a stress at the time, but like it wasn't hard to find an actual house. Like the actual house it was the first one we looked at, that we got. But yeah, I'd say as long as you know who you're living with by the end of first term, then you're fine. But people will, in general, like if you want to be first to choose, it's more like sixth or seventh week to like start looking at houses. And I think our booking when we actually looked at our house was in seventh week, I'm pretty sure. And then we signed. I think I was on the varsity trip. I was like on a mountain, trying to figure out when someone rusticated, and we had to re-sign, and it was a whole thing. But yeah.
Fab. Wow, it sounds, bless you, it sounds like it was quite almost, well, I mean, you say it was fine, but it sounds like to me that sounds like it would have been quite a struggle. I just wanted to just pick you up on the fact that you said that a couple of people rusticated, and for those who don't know, rustication is just the process of someone basically just taking a year out from their degree in Oxford. Um, but yeah, so yeah, you had some people leave, people from coming from
Yeah.
Cats. Oh my goodness, that
Yeah,
must
it
have
was
been
a
a
whole
bit.
thing. Yeah, it was a whole thing. But like the actual finding the house itself wasn't difficult. And like for all 3 houses in our group of friends, or like our bigger group of friends, it wasn't hard to find houses. It was more just like people figuring
Yeah.
out where to people, basically. Yeah.
To be fair, I feel like that's true. It really is the like working out who you're going to be with, because I'd say we started looking in sixth or around sixth, seventh week of the Christmas term, which is Michaelmas term. Yeah, for a house, because we just couldn't agree on who we wanted to live with. So I live with 8 people, so it was quite hard to try and like round
God.
people up to live with. So yeah, but I think it all falls in place, as you've demonstrated, and you do sort it out, and you just learn to live with the people who you get put with at the end of the day. So
You hear horror
um
stories, but
yeah,
it's not, for the vast majority of people, I don't think it's that awful. It's a bit of a stress because it's something entirely new, but
yeah, definitely. So you mentioned like how you were like, oh, a 5-person house in Cowley. So I think Cowley is one of the places that you'd want to live in Oxford. So like where do students then live in Oxford? Because you said there was a range of places that people could live.
yeah, so the vast majority of people I think live in Cowley, and that's like it's closer to books. It's a bit out of the center. There's almost like its own like main street and kind of nightlife and bars and clubs, well, bars and event places and stuff, which are really great. Honestly, like the restaurants and bars in Cowley are amazing. And also you meet more Brooks students because Oxford Brooks students also live in Cowley, and so it's like quite a studenty area. And then alternatively, you can live in Jericho, which is like more going towards North Oxford, so like Jericho into Summertown, which is closer to the center for the most part than the houses in Cowley, and also I think a bit more expensive and a bit more residential, but the houses are really nice. And especially if you want a bigger house, a larger house with more people, there are bigger houses in Jericho I think are more like easy to come by, and you're like by Portmeadow, which is one of the parks in Oxford, and it's really nice, and like also has a main street that's a bit less like bar-y, but more shops and like nice cafes and stuff like that. And then people also live down Abingdon Road, which is like almost like south of Oxford a bit, like so you go down past the river, and that's really nice. I think a bit more residential as well, but like there's loads of houses to come by, and I think it's slightly cheaper than like living in Jericho anyway. And then I also know some people that live in Botley, so that's like close to the train station, really close to town, cheaper usually, but it's usually smaller houses or flats. And so like if you only want to live with like a few people, and like sometimes that's a bit less drama and like a bit easier. I think the house gets kept a bit cleaner if you have less people. But those like that's you can live in Botley and like or even the city center. I know a couple people that do that, but obviously that's the most expensive option. So there's loads of places.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think I would agree with you in that like looking for houses in Cowley is probably like the biggest thing that people look for. But you need to remember that when you are looking at Cowley, that you are competing against Oxford Brook students as well. That being said, like I managed to look around. I think we looked around 3 or 4 houses in Cowley, and then Iffley, which is sort of like parallel to it as well. So like yeah, like you said, looking for the house is actually not the difficult part. It's just sort of setting up everything when you get to it. So
Say the letting agents that you most often work with are like college. So like we had College and County as our letting agent. Like they were fine. Like I think there are some like horror stories and stuff, and like there are some issue like with deposits. You have to like be careful, but in general they are like suited for student houses, and like a lot of the ones in Oxford are specifically student letting agents, and so like they deal with all the students. Like you're not new, you're not coming into something that they have no idea how to like treat a student. They know what they're doing.
yeah, yeah, no, I mean, my house is with College and County as well, so I know what you're talking about. And but like you said, yeah, they are like specifically designed for students. So like, you ask your student questions like, for example, when you start living in a house, you have to apply for a council tax exemption. And I was there like, do I have to apply for this? And they were like, yeah, you have to, like, and then sent me all the links to it and stuff. So they're very prepared for, having students and all their questions. So don't worry about it. So when you're looking around a house then and you're going to view a house, what would you say is the main things that you would recommend looking for when looking for a house for like say a group of 5 or 6 people?
So I was, or like my group anyway, we like prioritize having like quite a nice living room and like dining room, or not dining room but kitchen area. And like I think we spent like the vast majority of our time in there really. And I think it's also really nice to have, because a lot of the times in the houses, because they're not like purpose built, a lot of them they will end up having a box room or like one smaller bedroom. And so that person, if that person, like we had them pay lower, like less rent in our house, but that person can then work in the living room as well if there's like a big enough space. And like it's quite, ours was quite nice and like light and stuff. It was good. And then also I would definitely say look out for like damp. A lot of the student houses in Oxford are damp and like have damp, and that just, you just live with it. But I think some houses are much worse than others. And also I would definitely say, so we actually ended up knowing one of the people that lived in the house before us, and I think that's really good. So if you can, like, if you're friends with any people in the year above in your subject or in your college, I think it's really good to like just be like, oh, could we look at your house, or like could we have a look if it's the right amount of people for what you want, because you just get vivid insight, and like you'll know what the realtor is like, and you'll know what the house is like as a house. Like, does the water always like shut off for no reason or anything like that? Like I think definitely look for damp. If you can go and see the house or talk to someone that's already lived there before, like even if you just post on your JCR page, and I would say prioritize like living space, unless you're a person that likes to work in your room and doesn't like to use libraries and stuff. And then I'd say like, then it's when you're choosing bedrooms, when you're both choosing houses and choosing bedrooms within a house, definitely like look for those spaces and like nicer desks and furniture.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I'd say that was one of the things, like a large like living space, like a social space, was something that me and my mates looked for when we were looking at our house. And we were quite lucky because we came across one which had like a huge kitchen and a lounge area, which is perfect for us. We always find ourselves in there doing not enough work, but there we go.
Hanging out the whole
Yeah,
time.
literally.
Second.
But I'd say another thing to look out for as well is definitely storage space. Because obviously with 8 people in our house, there's extra cases. There's always like loads of pots and pans, bowls. Like we did not coordinate this well at all when we moved in. So yeah, 100% look at like fridge space, look at cupboard space. Is there enough cupboards per person? You know, is there a place where you can store all your laundry and stuff like that? You know, just like think about things like that. Like, what do you have at home that you use quite a lot or is quite useful to you that you could then transfer to the house that you're potentially looking at?
Definitely.
That's
And bikes as well. So I think a lot of people
mm,
in Cowley, or like
yeah.
just anyone in Oxford, like most students end up getting a bike in their second year, I think. And like my house, we weren't allowed to keep our bikes inside. I think we kind of ended up doing
Yeah.
oh well,
Not
but
not
like
nice to know.
we weren't supposed to anyway. We were supposed to, and because it was like a terrace house, you had to walk your bike through to the backyard, which is kind of annoying, and which is why we stopped doing it. But like I don't know, some houses have stricter rules on that, and like if you might not want to put it outside because there's a lot of like bike theft in Oxford. So like I would say look at that and like look at where you're going to keep bikes. Basically, I mean it's not the be all and end all, but it's
Yeah.
definitely it was something an annoyance in our house that we didn't really like weren't equipped
Yeah.
for.
No, definitely. Maybe try and look for a house that has bike racks as well. I know a lot of student houses do actually have them, normally like in the alleys by the side of them or like in the front gardens or
Yeah.
even the back gardens, you know. But yeah, definitely check because it's actually so useful when you've got something that you can just like leave your bike out and it, you know, not get stolen. Um, yeah, because unfortunately there seems to be a bit of a thing in Oxford where bikes do unfortunately get stolen quite a lot. So it's quite sad.
I would
um,
like
yeah.
say just location wise, we lived on a street where like it was mostly I think it was mostly postgrads on our street because no one
Mhm.
seemed to be particularly loud. But I think definitely look for that if you plan on like doing parties and doing things like that. Then I think being around other student houses is probably better. But also like they
Mm,
will be louder on nights you're not having parties.
yeah.
Whereas like we like got a noise complaint from a neighbor at 9 p.m. for doing like nothing for having at family dinner
No.
where you have your college children over, which is like people in your subject. But yeah, but they were fine. I mean, it was fine in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Oh,
would
that's
say
good.
maybe look at that and like if you know you're going to be a house that's like hosting people and everything, then maybe you want to look at slightly less like more student-y rather than residential areas.
Yeah, that's 100% a good shout. And yeah, maybe inquire with the estate agents, be like, oh, what's like the normal people who live around here? Are they Oxonians or are they actually like just students who are just here spending their time, you know? So just like maybe like give like a quick, I don't know, like thing of like the whole process, but like when you found the house then, what are the sort of steps that follow after that?
So we found that we saw the house online. One of my housemates and knew one of the girls that was living in it, so we asked her to send us a video of it, and then we went in, but we booked in an appointment to look at it, and then basically, I think the next day, I think we looked at two more houses that day, and then the next day we said, "This is the house." Like, we'd like basically we got in contact with College and County. They responded. We had to put down a deposit, which was I think 2 months rent. Um, for each of us. We had to put down that deposit on I can't remember, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that, and then we had to get our get like a guarantor for each of us individually had to get a guarantor. So like mine was my mom. I think Sean's was his brother, and like different people just choose different like it's normally adults with like a credit score and like an income to say that you if you default on your rent payments, someone else will like they basically take their bank details and they will pay it for you or like they will be held accountable. Um, and then we went into College and County, took in like I think like passports. They needed like identity checks and like national insurance numbers and the guarantors information as well. Went into College and County, had them sign off on all our documents, and then they took our deposit from our accounts, and that was that. Then it was like our house. We were ready to move in basically, and then we had to. I'm trying to think, and then like so that was by like February I think or March, and then we moved in August, I think like August 18th or something. And so in the weeks before that, we had to set up, we actually didn't set up Wi-Fi. I would definitely suggest setting up Wi-Fi before you get there. It's so annoying not to have it. But so like Wi-Fi, we had to change, you had to read the water meter and then change the water. Well, you don't have to change, but you have to basically change over whoever the students that are paying before you to your accounts to pay for the water. And then same with electricity, we chose a different electricity provider because it was cheaper, I think, or something. But yeah, it's honestly like I don't know, like everybody does it every day. You know, like people do that stuff every day, and like it's not the most difficult, and like it's user friendly. They make it easy, and like you can go out searching for like really good deals or like weird. I know one of my friends their provider like sent them cases of beer. That was they were like a student one, and that was their like promotion at the start of term. So weird, so rogue. But there's like loads of different things.
Sounds
Like you
great.
yeah, I got like a not a student beans card because that's free, but we got some student card from ours. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's loads of things like specifically for students. Like it wasn't the most difficult. I think also like would definitely recommend setting up a Splitwise, which is like where basically anything that you buy for the house, like from toilet paper to electricity bills to anything, you just put it in the Splitwise, and then each month the app, if this is an app, the app breaks down like who owes who what, and then you just pay them. And it's really helpful.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, and then we moved in, and like the boiler was broken when we moved in, which wasn't ideal, but like got that fixed. Everything like was fine. Once you move in, you do an inventory in which you say like these are the things in the house and these are the things not in the house, and like you have to, I think you have to do it within a week of moving in, and everyone has to sign it or else it's void. And I would definitely recommend, like it kind of takes a while because you have to go through each room and be like, there's a mark on this wall and there's a hole in the carpet there, and like there's a burn on the side,
Yeah.
whatever. And like for my house anyway, like we ended up having to like kind of like fight for some of our deposit back, and we used that document to help say like we actually didn't add these things or
Yeah.
take these things, kind of thing. And I think also just like when you're going through the whole process, just save everything. Like I still have a folder on my desktop that's all the stuff for my house, and if you just save everything in one place, like they'll try and like they try to get away with things because you're students, I think, but like they're not entirely taking advantage of you. And also like if you're like, no, actually you should be paying for this, they don't want to deal with us, and so they very easily will be like, oh yeah, of course. And
Yeah.
like they have their own electricians and stuff for the most part, and that which will come out and help.
Yeah, it's very true what you're just saying then. How it's almost like they'll be like, no, I don't want to do this. But then if you push for it, like they kind of have to. It's kind of by law they have to. Like for example, we had a burst pipe in our house, and it cost us £240 to get an emergency plumber out to our house. And we were like, well, it wasn't our fault. You've got to pay it, even though like it wasn't one of their plumbers. They were annoyed by that, but like, it's kind of like in an emergency situation, you've got to act, haven't you? And yeah, and we managed to get the deposit, well, the money back, which is which is good, which was really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely.
As soon as you pick up any like little bit of fuss, even just sending the email, like if you're like, oh, I
Yeah,
can't really be bothered, like it was only 30 quid to like change the Hoover or something like that, like just do it, because they will send it, and like they have the money, and like they're
yeah, they
not
do. They do have the
not
money.
nothing for them to do it, and it's like it will affect your budget and stuff like that if you're paying for things that you don't need to pay
Yeah,
for.
100%. Yeah. And you also mentioned something about a guarantor. I just wanted to say that I actually have a friend at the moment who lives in my house, and she's actually international. And I think the idea behind a guarantor is that they have to be a British homeowner, or they have to be some sort of British
Yeah.
citizen. And so what she did is she just got my friend's dad, who's a British homeowner, to be her guarantor. So if you're an international student, don't worry about that side of things. Like, there should be someone in the college, or someone's like a friend's parent or uncle or whatever, who will like happily like guarantor you. So don't stress about that. Just like inquire into it and see what you can work out. So overall then, do you prefer living in college accommodation then, or in private accommodation, and
Oh god.
why?
I think in my experience, I preferred living in college.
Hmm.
It's so hard because I'm glad I did it. I'm really glad I did it, and like summer was amazing, and I'm so glad I got to come to Oxford. And also like it was great to live in a house and like to have a full kitchen with an oven and like my own space. And now coming back into college, I feel a bit more like, oh, there's like porters and scouts and like people watching me. So like the people that like the security for college, and then the like cleaners in college that are great, but like it feels a bit less independent now. But I think living out in second year is like the ideal, because you get the like fun, and like you don't have like the pressure of being in college. And then definitely I'm glad to move back in third year and like have that, be closer to the library, and like be in central Oxford and stuff like that. It's difficult. I'm glad I did it, but I think in general I've preferred living in college, because so much of I think I prefer working in the college library and like worked in the college bar and things like that. And so my life was very college central.
I think that's very true. I think it's especially like out of COVID times, I think you do really spend a lot of time in college, whether you're in the JCR or the bar, or like you said, in the library. or even in halls, you can spend quite a lot of time in there as well. So I'd say I think I had a better time in college purely on the basis that, like, I don't know, you just sort of have less to think about, less to deal with.
It's
But the
hard as well with COVID, like to
Yeah,
say
yeah,
it's so different
definitely.
from being in college is really different.
Yeah. But I'd say the one thing about living out, which I'm actually quite grateful for, is it actually improved my ability on a bike. So
Yeah.
so that
And
was
also,
one, yeah.
I don't know where you live, but like I love Cowley, and like it was
Mm,
great to have like a different area, and it's so like Cowley and also like Iffley and St. Clement's, like all those that area in general is like a very different vibe to Central Oxford, and like quite welcome and
yeah.
nice, studenty in a different way than the centre studenty, which is good.
No, 100%. I mean, I live down Abingdon Road, so I'm like other way from Cowley. But like you said, it's such a different vibe to the center of the city, and like it's nice to see other parts of Oxford that you wouldn't actually get to see if you had full accommodation for all the years in your college. So yeah, it's really nice to like be able to explore and you know open your brain up to the knowledge of Oxford and the surrounding areas. But yeah, so that's actually all we have time for today. And we've learned some really cool and interesting stuff about renting private accommodation in Oxford. And thank you so much, Lily, for sharing your experiences and all your tips and tricks on how to look for a house, and also for sharing your slightly nightmarish experience of
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
switching
It was
people up.
nice to
Yeah.
have. Yeah, God.
But yeah, thank you to our followers for listening to this podcast or watching this YouTube video. And also remember to follow us on Instagram. So our Instagram handle is at Oxford from the Inside, no spaces. And also remember to check out our LinkedIn and our Twitter pages for regular updates on our content. And yeah, I hope you all stay safe and well. And until next time, bye.